Cast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everybody. This is Amy Klickner with the Lake Superior Community Partnership. We're just at 12:30 here, going to give a minute or so as we see attendees logging on. So just hang tight for a moment and we'll get started shortly. All right, well, people are still joining in, but we have a lot to cover this afternoon, so I'm going to get started. Again, I'm Amy Klickner, the CEO of the Lake Superior Community Partnership, and good afternoon. Welcome to today's webinar, COVID-19 Resources for Upper Peninsula Businesses. When we put together our webinar schedule at the end of 2019 to cover the year, let's just say COVID-19 resources was definitely not on the agenda, and how quickly our world has changed and the information that is coming fast and furious to all of us. And we wanted to be able to put some subject matter experts together to help you navigate through these difficult times. But before we get started, I'd like to go over a few items so you know how to participate in today's event. You're listening and using the computer's speaker system by default. If you prefer to join over the phone, just select telephone in the audio pane and the dial-in information will be displayed. You will have the opportunity to submit text questions to today's presenters by typing your questions into the question pane of the control panel. You may send in questions at any time during the presentations, and we will collect them and address them in the Q&A session at the end of today's presentations. It is now my pleasure to introduce Mary Myers, the Director of Business Development at the LSCP. Mary has 5 years of experience in economic development and is currently working toward becoming a certified economic developer. She is also a certified business service professional, a notary public, and certified in economic modeling systems. Today, Mary will be touching on a checklist for what the businesses should be doing right now and other services provided by the Lake Superior Community Partnership. Welcome, Mary.
Thank you, Amy, and thank you everyone for joining us today. Emily, if you want to click next. As Amy mentioned, I'm the Director of Business Development here at the Lake Superior Community Partnership, and just to get us started, a brief overview of what our mission is, which is to stimulate and sustain a vibrant regional economy by facilitating economic growth and prosperity. Next slide. So one of our main focuses has been reaching out to businesses in the community to see how we can help them during this time. It is a hard time for many of you, and we want you to know that we're here to help you with anything that we can. Myself, along with Brooke, one of our business development representatives, and Megan, our outreach coordinator, have been helping with this effort. The team has been going through trainings as well to become more knowledgeable on all of the programs that are out there and available, such as things like the SBA loan programs, which Laura Moronic will be discussing later today. We've also been tuning into the IEDC webinars, which is the International Economic Development Council, so that we can know what other economic developers around the world are doing and utilize those best practices. Our marketing team has been working hard at keeping our website up to date with the most relevant information for businesses. If you haven't checked it out, I would encourage you to do so. There is a lot of useful information on there. Along with that, we've also been sending out e-blasts with new information as it becomes available on programs. If you're not signed up for those, I would encourage you to reach out to one of our staff members so that you can get on the list, because that's going to be the most up-to-date information. And then lastly, like many others, we have been holding virtual meetings like this through Zoom or GoToWebinar so that we can meet with businesses still and help them with their needs. Emily, next slide. So some of the business services that we have or are currently providing is assistance with grants and loans, such as the SBA loans. Those have been really popular. If you need help applying with any of the SBA loans, or reach out to myself or Brooke. Like I said, we've been going through trainings that have been available to help with the application process and just answer questions that you might have on those. Unemployment support. We've been getting a lot of questions on unemployment. So there's articles on our website, and then also hopefully today Laura will be able to answer some of those questions for you. If you need help with finance or marketing or promotional items, we're assisting with that. And then we also recently sent out an e-blast and posted on our website a service that North Star is providing. They have a special deal for our partners, but you can get more information on that under the COVID-19 section of our website. Next slide. So one of the most important things that we have done is we've created a crisis checklist for businesses to use during this time. Every single business is important to our communities. So this tool is something that you guys should look at. Our team has put together a few ideas that you can work through as a business owner to help ease some of the strain on your business. And also another thing, please let us know if there's things that you're doing to survive during this that aren't on our checklist, so that we can share that with others and work together during this time. This can also be found on our website. Next slide. So the big question, what's next? One of the most important things businesses need is certainty. And of course, the times we are in are extremely uncertain. We continue to work with businesses on the various programs and resources available, but the ability to open their doors again is much needed. So recently, we announced a new partnership with SBAM, which is a Small Business Administration of Michigan, that provides our investors with a membership to SBAM as well. The additional resources offered by SBAM will only enhance what the LSCP provides. We are also working on a local purchasing program that will be announced shortly to help spur revenue generation in our community as the economic restart happens. Lastly, we continue to be part of the discussion on how to but doing so with the city of employees and customers as a priority. We have just launched a survey jointly with our Northern Michigan Chamber Alliance partners that asks for your feedback on what a strategy for restart looks like and what tools you need to do so. So please take a moment and fill that survey out. It was sent in an e-blast yesterday, and it can also be found under the COVID-19 on our website. Next slide. So lastly, here is contact information for all of the LSCP staff. Do not hesitate to reach out to any of us if you have any questions. If we can't answer the question, we'll find out who can and help you in any way we can. And that's all that I have.
Thank you very much, Mary. As you can see, obviously a lot of the work at the Lake Superior Community Partnership has shifted to supporting businesses, in particular small businesses that are going through a difficult time. But there are also opportunities in crises like this. So, we are here to help people take advantage of that. And I think Marty's going to touch a little bit on that as well. So next up, Marty Fatante, the Chief Executive Officer of Invest UP. Marty began to lead Invest UP, the region's lead private sector-led regional economic development organization, on January 1st of 2019. And boy, has it been a year, hey Marty? Over the preceding 14 years, Fatanti served in the legislature. In addition to serving as Chief of Staff to an Upper Peninsula Senate District, Fatanti also served as Policy Advisor to the Michigan House of Representatives. Today, Marty will be discussing the Michigan Economic Development Corporation, or MEDC programs, manufacturing retooling needs, and some Federal Reserve information. We have been working very, very closely with Marty and his team at Invest Up, and appreciate them being here and being part of the collaboration of economic developers across the UP that are just working to make a difference. Thanks for being here, Marty, and I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Amy, and thanks for the invitation and the introduction. As you mentioned, I served as on staff for 15 years in the legislature, and as my phone is blowing up, I don't know that I've ever been more grateful for this position than today, despite the challenge. As you will see from the news tonight, that it appears Operation Gridlock is truly proving successful down at the Capitol, if success is measured by those that are there. So it's certainly something to see. So in any event, we are a regional economic development organization. It was founded in November of 2017, as Amy mentioned, really kind of under the banner of UP Power. And so for those that have been to state playoff games, you will often see those that are rivals during the year, be it Negaunee versus Ishpeming or Ishpeming versus Marquette, Escanaba versus Menominee. At playoff time, they all come together, and you see the strength of the Upper Peninsula rooting for itself in that setting. And that really was the idea behind this organization, is how can we harness the power of the collective with the Upper Peninsula and not be constrained by artificial political boundaries. So organizations, local EDOs do a really nice job. And at the front of that list is the Lake Superior Community Partnership. They do a fantastic job as they serve the Central Upper Peninsula, Marquette, Baraga, and Dickinson County as well. And so our reach, or our look, is just a little bit different. And at the end of the day, we try to be a resource. So Amy, Mary, Ashley, Emily, Brooke, and Megan really do a great job in serving those communities. And we try to be a resource to them where we can. And this crisis has proved maybe that model and its value to be true. And there's a number of examples that have arisen that kind of bear that out. And one of the examples, as you may have seen in the paper, Michigan Tech and its engineering team there quickly came together to assemble a PPE sanitizer, the MTU sanitizer that sanitizes up to 60,000 pieces of personal protection equipment a day. And they needed some connectivity to get that to Detroit, to the hot spot. So by virtue of some relationships we had, we were able to introduce them to Senator Adam Ollier. And just today, that unit is being deployed in Detroit through Senator Ollier's leadership at a Detroit fire department. They want to test it at a fire department before moving it out to make sure it specs out. So really, that's what we look to do, is make those types of introductions and try to build upon relationships. And I included this quote to start because I think it's appropriate. And when you look at what we're looking to do, we have come together, and we are staying together. And really, at the end of the day, success is going to be measured by our ability to work together. And as I've heard from Laura Moronic and others, we have done that exceptionally well. So Laura, with her role with, in her role with the SBDC, is on regular calls, as I would understand it, and get some sense as to what other communities have been able to collaborate and partner. And as she has shared with me, we really have been out in front of the curve in doing that. And that's a testament to the leadership of those local economic developers like Amy Klickner, Lois Ellis, Kathy Reynolds, and Munising. So they've really done a good job in bringing the economic development community together to allow us that opportunity for success. And so that's why I want to start with really a thank you to the local economic development team for that type of leadership, to Laura, who's been working tirelessly, and to so many others who've partnered with us. TV6 and WNMU came together to do a simulcast, and Marquette County Bar Association, in response to a need that we were hearing, came together to say, we can answer some of the legal questions that small business has. So they put on a special media meet where Laura Riley, Sean Fosmeyer, and Matt Weesey, the county prosecutor, were kind enough to give their time and answer questions that small businesses had. And I think that's really a good measure of the type of partnership and collaboration that you're seeing across the Upper Peninsula that hopefully sets us up for opportunity coming out of this. So if you could move to the next slide, Emily. So there are a number of, I think, resources that the small business community can go to. I think part of the challenge that we've heard is there's almost too much information. So the economic development community came together to put together a website, update906.com, that looks to be streamlined and a clearinghouse of reliable information that offers some insight as to what the current programming is that's available both on a state level and on a federal level. And in addition, there's a number of other trusted resources that are out there. The LSCP has done a very good job with regard to the resources that it's providing. The Small Business Association of Michigan also has done a very nice job of laying it out. And our friends at the Michigan Economic Development Corporation, the MEDC, also have a robust web. So there are certainly some resources, and we would welcome you to go to update906.com or the LSCP page as well to make sure that you understand those types of resources that are available. And Emily, if you could move to the next slide. As you can see here, there are a number of local and state resources that are indeed available. The truth, though, is, as we saw through the MEDC grant program, which the recipients were just selected on Friday, the real opportunity comes from the federal programming that is available. The state, to its credit, has done a great job in trying to put some programming available to small business, but the reality is, based upon the state budget, they don't have the resources that are going to fix this problem. So there are certainly some programs, though, that I should highlight and mention. In addition to that grant program, the Upper Peninsula received $500,000 of the $10 million that the MEDC made available. And so it was, unfortunately, under our circumstances, just far too inadequate, but again, well-intentioned. The MEDC has got some other programs in addition to that that provide some relief as well. One that you should be aware of, because it's coming to a close this Friday, is a liquor buyback, a spirit buyback that was just announced, but it's on deadline for this Friday. So if you are a bar or a restaurant, please look for that programming opportunity for yourself, as that does provide some relief to you. There is a MEDC loan program that is just being closed out. It provides loan to small businesses in the amount of $50,000 to $200,000, and it may be a fit for some of the small businesses that we're talking to today. And if you need any additional information on any of the programs that are up, please feel free to reach out to info@update906.com. We've got a team that will try to quickly assemble to answer any questions you have and help you walk through that type of programming that may be of particular help to you. If you could move to the next slide, Emily. As you'll see from this data, it speaks to why that programming is really so necessary. So the Federal Reserve conducted a study about 4 weeks ago, and I think the Upper Peninsula business community was so anxious at that time that, despite the fact that the survey looked at 6 complete states that are west of us, as well as northern Wisconsin, Upper Peninsula respondents comprised 47% of all the responses that that survey received. And I think it's reflective of just how nervous the community was at that point in time. And as you see from the 2 slides that are included from the latest Federal Reserve study that was completed a little over a week ago, there's good reason for them to be anxious. As you can see from the slide on the bottom right, 50% of UP businesses in offering a revenue forecast for the next 6 months believe that they'll lose almost 50% of their revenue. And additionally, over the next 6 months, that same group forecasts that they will lose 75% of their revenue, or excuse me, a quarter of their revenue. So 75% of that group believes they'll lose at least a quarter of their revenue. So some significant revenue impact is expected over the next 6 months if we can't figure a way to start to get the economy back. And even more disconcerting than that, the Federal Reserve study, the slide on the left, indicates that within 6 months, 60% of Upper Peninsula business believes it won't be solvent. So some really critical markers for us as we look to what might be next steps. And Northern Initiatives just completed a survey, this came out yesterday, that looked at the concerns that business would have in coming out of this crisis. And you can see the 5 concerns that are listed there, which I think is a really good opportunity for us to be mindful of as we look to what those next steps may be. And if you could move to the next slide, Emily. So early last week, it was announced that the Senate was putting together a work group, a bipartisan work group that was looking at just that question. How can we safely restart the economy and what can we do? And there have been a couple conversations already with some members of this work group. It is comprised of 2 Northern Michigan legislators, and Senator Kurt Vanderwall and Senator Wayne Schmidt. Senator Vanderwall from Ludington and Senator Wayne Schmidt from the Traverse City area. And then it's being chaired by Senator Ken Horn, whose wife actually is an economic developer, and his sister-in-law actually runs Saginaw Future. So I think they're very mindful of the challenges coming into this that we are seeing, but they've essentially asked us to reflect on 3 questions, and that is what businesses should come online first, how do we strategically bring back business, and what best practices should businesses embrace as they come back online. And so we are in the process of putting together a summary of sorts for that work group. And so if you have some thoughts as to what that should look like, we would certainly welcome that input. And you can address that also to info@update906.com. But we would love to get that in front of this work group by noon on Friday. So please, if you have some thoughts in that regard, we would welcome you to reach out sooner than later. And then lastly, Emily, if you go to the last slide, I wanted to close with a point that Amy made earlier, and it's ironic that the quote actually references the Chinese symbols here with a JFK quote, but I think it's very true. You know, in the midst of this crisis, there are certainly dangers, but I think as significantly, there are opportunities. And I think that's what we need to focus on for the region and for the Upper Peninsula, is where are those opportunities? What does coming out of this look like? My board and I had the good pleasure of meeting with former Governor Rick Snyder by phone last week, and he challenged my board. That very question is, what are you going to do coming out of this to build the future? And his counsel was, you need to undertake that analysis now. And I think we have some opportunities as we come out of this that other areas don't necessarily have by virtue of what some of our strengths are. And a Popular Science article in 2017 said that the Upper Peninsula would be one of 3 places in the country to live in 2020 because of climate change that was taking place. And I think there's some opportunity coming out of the COVID crisis that is similar in some respects because of the rural nature of our communities and where we derive some economic opportunity through our natural resource base and our outdoor recreation base. And so as we're looking to that future, how can we further capitalize on those strengths? So as we move forward into the future, that's a primary emphasis for us is to look to strategically what those steps look like. And so we certainly welcome that conversation and dialogue, but we think at some point here in the immediate days ahead, those are types of conversations and steps that we need to be taking to get the Upper Peninsula economy at least ready to start to move when it is safe to move. So with that, I look forward to questions that you may have as the webinar goes along, and again, really appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you very much, Marty. And I think some very poignant comments at the end about opportunity. A lot of the discussions, of course, are on, how do we restart the economy? What does that look like? We've talked about human life and business life, are two parallel paths and don't need to be mutually exclusive. And we have to be safe and healthy, but as do our businesses. And how do we get to that point? And when you talk about the potential opportunities and some of the conversations going on, there's the discussion as to, okay, recreation and travel. How soon will people feel comfortable getting on a plane or going to Disney World again? We really definitely will stand out as a drive-to destination for visitors and tourists that will be, taking it lightly and kind of easing into getting back out in the world. The second discussion I hear a lot of with colleagues across the country is, will people, and in particular families, be making decisions to move to more rural, more less urban style areas? Because when you look at the hotspots of all of this happening, they have happened in very dense populated areas. And will people start thinking of the future and saying, maybe it's better that I find a more rural place and work remotely, because we've now proven that remote work works, which has always been, out there for debate, but we're all doing it right now. So I do think, those things, along with you're seeing the retooling of a lot of manufacturers getting into the healthcare space and being able to shift what they're manufacturing. Do they continue to keep manufacturing those types of things and develop an entirely different product line than they've been on? And Jacquard Fabrics, famous Stormy Cromer, is a perfect example in Ironwood, who's now making masks, gowns, and booties. Well, what if they spin off, a whole entire line, hire more people when this is all over, and take on a whole nother industry specialty. So I do agree that there are definitely a lot of opportunities coming this way. So thank you again, Marty. That was wonderful. And right now we're going to move on to Laura Moronic, the Regional Director of the Small Business Development Center. Laura is a growth specialist and expert certified specialist and has experience in financial analysts, funding solutions, and business acquisition. We've worked with Laura and the SBDC for many years, and just so glad you could be here today. I know you are run ragged, and so is your team right now. So thanks for taking time to be with us today, Laura, and I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Amy, and thank you so much for inviting us today. At first, I just want to say that it has been great working with all the partners in the UP. It always is. We work together very well, especially in crisis, I notice. And I'm just going to repeat what Marty said, but I have been in so many update meetings for a region and for our state in the region of the SBA, and for the SBA meetings, and for my organization's state meetings. And I find that it's wonderful. I often have more information than anybody else there, just because we are all sharing so much here as a team. So I really appreciate everyone that has been working with us, and just wanted to say that again, that it's brings me a lot of pride when the UP stands out in front. Born and raised here. So anyway, if you want to start, I'm going to talk to you first about what our core services are, which is we like to do business startups. We work with existing businesses on mostly one-on-one training and teaching of business skill sets. We work with growth companies, in helping them analyze what the cost of growth might be. We help take businesses to the bank, help them get their business plans and their financial projections ready for funding. And we have advanced technology company we work with through our tech team. And the tech team for the SBDC actually holds the BAF funding. So they're the administrators over the BAF funding for the state of Michigan. Before we get too far into this, I'd just like to say, if you notice the logos, so the SBDC is a national organization that is contracted by state through the Small Business Administration. They're the ones that pay us, and Michigan Economic Development Corporation matches those funds. So we're also very lucky to be in a state where there is a lot of state support for entrepreneurialism and small business. We couldn't do it without MEDC, and we always want to give them plenty of appreciation. We also want to give appreciation to our host for the Upper Peninsula, which is Michigan Technological University, MTU. They're a great host that offers us a lot of ability to teach and to share their students to assist small businesses. So next slide, please. So like we said, we do one-on-one business consulting. I like to consider it one-on-one skill training. Business education, which you'll see by what we've been doing and what we're going to do, that our main focus is on education. Information-based planning through market research. We are able to get free market research for businesses and associations. We have the technology commercialization that works with the smart zones throughout the UP, which there's Michigan Tech Smart Zone in Houghton, Hancock. There's NMU's there, right there in Marquette, and there's also one in Sault Ste. Marie at the Smart Zone Economic Development Center there. So we will also work with export early stage, meaning we help businesses look at the ability to start exporting through doing export mapping for them. We might be the first contact to sign up for MEDC's export grants, and then as they grow out of us. I mean, that's pretty much our goal. Is we hope to grow the business's skill sets enough where they don't need us anymore, or where they grow so big they can hire specialty in-house. So let's talk first then, before I go to the next slide, what we've been doing with COVID, with business education. All of our core services are pretty much slowed to next to nothing. We put all our focus also on COVID, and being that we are a paid partner of the SBA, it was their expectation that we would be the lead to get the information out to all relevant partners and to the community about their SBA COVID, the CARES Act programs. So we've been, for the last 4 weeks, we've been giving trainings online on how to fill out forms for the EIDL loans. Then when the EIDL advanced grant came about, we pushed that out and gave more training on how to get that. Then the last week, we've been giving training on what the PPP program is about, so that people can know to go to their banks and what the expectations are. And so I think we've given all those trainings also to all the partners here that are present today, and they've been also helping one-on-one, because there's no way with 4 people I could take care of the entire UP. So from the very beginning, we included all the partners on the training, and they volunteered to do whatever they could to help the small businesses in our region, which it's been tremendously helpful. We haven't been overwhelmed, because we know we can always send the overflow, or the overflow is automatically going to local people they know. It's been great. So what are the next steps? Let's take it to the next level. Every partner seems to be doing what they do best in the next step. So we're going to talk about, this is all the various educational programs we have online that you can find at mbdcmichigan.org in our training. And most of these are all web-based and recorded, so that you can play them on demand. Next slide, please. So what we're working on next. So as a state, we determined, in fact, we did some surveys ourselves. And with these programs coming out and the requirements for them, like the PPP requires that 75% of the funding be spent on payroll. and 25% on fixed. And if you follow those processes, that loan can be forgiven 100%. That's a big one for small businesses. And we already have small businesses in our region that are receiving funds. I have one business that actually received funds as of the 7th of April on the PPP. And we have confirmation today of 3 businesses receiving the grant portion of the EIDL loans. So money is flowing, and it's important that the businesses now are careful and plan how they use that money so they can get that forgiveness and not have to give the money back. Tremendous help. $40,000 to a small business for payroll for 2 months might be what it takes for them to have what they need to keep flowing when businesses come back online, right? They won't lose their staff. That's the idea. Both of these programs are meant to be for employment retention. So cash flow right now is the #1 priority, cash flow. In fact, I was working with one business this morning that had received one of those loans, because now they have all that money and they're afraid, am I really going to be able to spend this? Am I going to spend it right so I get it forgiven? So we're giving trainings. We're giving trainings, and this week and next week at noon, there's a 1-hour webinar given by Lance Wolf on this. Next slide. The second contributing factor that small businesses have shown concern with is marketing and pivoting. And so, you know, things are changing. The way business has changed because of this, the way business will be conducted going forward will probably be changed. Our consumers, our clients, you know, the way they've had to purchase and use their monies has changed. I think some of these things will create new patterns and new habits. And therefore, businesses are concerned. Will they still have their suppliers? Will their customers come back to them? You know, so we have 2 classes on that as well. And these are on Thursday of each week at noon, and that'll be given by Nicole Putvin. She is our marketing specialist. And the next one, please. And the final one is for businesses that have accounts receivables and accounts payables. These are more probably our manufacturing and, you know, our kind of distribution type of businesses. And, you know, what we're finding is the suppliers are putting pressure, you know, they want to be paid, right? But yet if we have nothing moving, we have inventory, but we're not receiving any money, or vice versa. Sometimes the inventory is moving, but we're not receiving, you know, the receivables for what we're selling. Because everything's on account. So Daniel Yoder is also with us, and he's going to give 2 trainings on this on Fridays at noon for this Friday and next Friday. And the idea is he has some strategies of how to create a balance with those so that you can keep cash flow going, keep communications going, you know, all of that that's essential when you have that extra, I guess, extra point that you have to balance in your business. So with that, you can see that what we're doing is trying to think forward, like all the rest of the partners, of what the small businesses will need. And we don't go in and do the services for them. However, I will tell you right now that the SBA has given Michigan $5 million more, and they've already given that guarantee to the state of Michigan. That will be coming out to the regions. And so they've asked us, what do the small businesses need? What need does your region need? And right off the bat, I said, more feet on the street. And we need to be able to give some services to the small businesses that they can't afford, like in a kind of a grant process. Meaning, if somebody needs to pivot their business and they need to be able to have a website to sell online and they don't have that, you know, that can cost a little bit of money. And right now that's a commodity they don't have. But what if we had the ability to have some local providers of those services that we could contract with and say, hey, for every client we send to you, you can give them 10 hours of service and you charge us, bill us, we'll take care of it. So we're working on that plan right now. We're also launching about 4 more interns to kind of work with the current consultants we have to beef up their one-on-one and do help them with follow-up. And in addition to that, we will be hiring at this point probably 5 part-time consultants to help with feet on the street in the regions that right now don't have a permanent person. You know, so that might not be in Marquette because you have a lot of great partnerships in Marquette, but there's areas like Ontonagon and Ironwood and Mackinac that, you know, they really don't have a lot of support. So we're going to try to support the EDOs in those regions to have a little bit more power to help their small businesses. So with that, you want to go through the next slide. I'm just going to go through the staff that work with us, just so you probably are familiar with them, but if not, next slide, please. We have Lance Wolf's been with us 12 years. We have Josh Billington, he's out in Sault Ste. Marie. The next one. There's Daniel Yoder, he's up in Houghton, Hancock, the west side of the state. He's a recovering VIP of lending for a bank in Ohio. Came to work with us just in May. Great addition to the team. Next slide. We have Nicole Young. She's down in Garden, but she's the marketing specialist on the portability grant, and we will be keeping her on as a marketing specialist for the UP, even after the grant is done this October. And next slide. That's me, and the following slide is just our follow-up of our region and how to contact us. So thank you very much for having us today, and thank you for all the great partnerships and communications we've been participating in. I appreciate everyone very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Laura. Obviously, we'll have several questions on your programming and things that are popping up here when we get to the end, but really appreciate it. I know, you know, we're moving quickly through this, but we will be providing you the slides in the recording in a follow-up email in case you missed anything, because there's a lot of great information for you to take back to your house basically right now. But thank you again, Laura. It's been a great partnership and looking forward to continuing to work with you. Finally, we welcome our last panelist, Laura Caters-Riley, an attorney at Kendricks Bordeaux, Keefe, Savoy, and Larson PC. Laura is a graduate of the University of Michigan and the University of Wisconsin Law School. She maintains licensure in Wisconsin as well as Michigan. Laura serves as a management representative on the board of the UP Labor Management Council, has been named a rising star in Michigan super lawyers. She has a general practice with the emphasis on management, side labor and employment law, business law, real estate, and estate planning. And Laura has always been our go-to and has been kind enough to give of her time on many panels and speaking opportunities for our investors. So we really appreciate that. And thanks for being here, Laura, and I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay, you're welcome, Amy, and hi, everybody. Amy and the crew at LSCP has asked me to focus on the newest unemployment developments today. There's a lot to talk about with seemingly every week new laws coming out of Washington and directives coming out of Lansing. So there's a lot to talk about, but we're focusing on unemployment today. So the biggest story that you should be aware of course, is that we have a tremendous number of unemployment claims in the state of Michigan. I was watching a webinar yesterday that was put on by the director of the Department of Labor and Economic Opportunity here in Michigan, as well as the director of the Unemployment Insurance Agency. And he described that we are now at nearly 1 million unemployment claims in the state of Michigan, which approaches a quarter of the working population. It's truly amazing. The statistic also that he described was the fact that Michigan now is second only to California in the number of new unemployment claims. Part of this is the fact that the federal unemployment assistance package that comes out of the CARES Act, which we'll be describing in a moment, is active in Michigan as one of the first states. It is being rolled out state to state, depending on how on the ball a state's unemployment infrastructure already is, but Michigan is one of the earlier states rolling out the federal level money. So that's in part why we have so many of those claims. So let's talk about the big factors here affecting unemployment right now. The first one is the governor's Executive Order 24, which provided enhancements to unemployment. And this is a continuation of an earlier executive order that she gave earlier in March. And the pieces to know in Michigan is that the executive order suspends some of the regular rules of eligibility for workers to become eligible for unemployment. The normal requirements of having to continue to seek work are, for the most part, suspended. Employers who want to put in place a work share program, they are being given greater flexibility by UIA to do that, even if they otherwise don't meet all the requirements of the program. The big issue to take a look at if you are concerned about the number of employees you have claiming unemployment is that now individuals who are laid off for COVID-19 related reasons or who are self-quarantining, that is, making the decision to stay home based on COVID-19 related symptoms or their decision that they are immunocompromised. Folks who are in remission from cancer, for example, are a big group who is deciding to self-quarantine. Folks with family care responsibilities who cannot work as a result of government orders. These are all reasons why somebody who might be laid off or not working who are now eligible for unemployment in the state. An additional piece of this executive order, which you'll notice if you look at the executive order, is anybody who is laid off or on leave of absence and when they apply for unemployment, indicate that the reason that they are not working is due to COVID-19, and the employee generally has to state that in their application. For a period of time, those unemployment benefits the employee receives will not be charged to the employer account. Finally, we now have, of course, an employment benefit that goes up to 26 weeks, as long as the reasons that the employee applied for unemployment are still there. And the jury is definitely still out on how long that is going to keep up, given that a lot of the reasons why people might be laid off or have leave of absence or be self-quarantining for COVID-19 are not a long time state of affairs. There are some instances where those circumstances are only going to last a couple of weeks. And the question is, how long are those unemployment benefits going to are required to self-certify that they still don't have work and they still have those conditions every couple of weeks to the UIA agency. So we'll see how long that goes. The current executive order with these enhancements to state unemployment expires on April 22nd, but it is likely that this is going to be further extended by the governor, especially given that she has extended her stay home, stay safe order through the end of the month. So we'll look for those. So we've got not only an enhancement to unemployment eligibility at the state level, we now also, and next slide please, we now also have an enhancement at the federal level. And this was a part of the CARES Act, which was signed into law by President Trump on March 27th. There are many facets of the CARES Act, which includes some of those SBA loan programs that our other speakers spoke about. But a big piece of it is an expansion of unemployment, in which the federal government essentially flows additional benefits to the states and leaves to the states the administration of those benefits, for the most part, as a way to get even more dollars into individuals' hands to help prop up the economy, and especially prop up people who have less work than before or are completely out of work due to COVID-19. So the CARES Act, in a nutshell, expands eligibility. So a big piece of this that I imagine a lot of the folks attending right now are interested in is the fact that there are business owners who are now available or eligible for unemployment, where previously under Michigan law, they weren't eligible. Somebody also who is not totally out of work, but is partially unemployed, has a slowdown in work, is furloughed, where they are working sometimes, but not full-time where they previously were. That is an additional piece of eligibility now. We also have seen an expansion of unemployment eligibility for people with little work history. Folks, for example, who might be recent college graduates who haven't been in the workforce long, or caregivers of young children who are just now returning to paid employment. So these are the kinds of folks who are becoming eligible under this expansion who previously wouldn't. Further, if somebody had earned rather low wages previously and a lot of tipped work, for example, who may not have had enough wage history to receive unemployment, those folks are now becoming eligible. In addition, another expansion out of the CARES Act is folks who were previously on unemployment in Michigan but have exhausted their benefits. A key feature of this, though, is that in addition to all of these expanded eligibility categories, the person applying in order to receive these funds must also attest that they're unable to work for any number of COVID-19 related reasons. And there are 10 reasons. I am not sure whether I ought to go through them individually, one by one. I think I will. I'll touch on them. But what I want to emphasize for you toward the end of my talk is, because the information and the guidance on these new laws changes almost daily sometimes, I've gotten in the habit of checking certain websites on a daily basis, and they do change almost every day. At the end of my presentation, I've given you some links where I'm going to point out to you where you need to go to review this information. So if you don't catch these COVID-19 related reasons as I'm describing them, note that there are links at the end of my talk that will direct you to where this information is. So in addition to being a member of one of these expanded categories, you have to attest that you're unable to work for one of these reasons. Either diagnosed with COVID-19 or experiencing symptoms and getting a diagnosis. Somebody in your household has been diagnosed with COVID-19. You're providing care for a family member who's been diagnosed with COVID-19. You have a child or other person in the household who's not able to attend school because of COVID-19 public health orders. You're not able to reach your place of employment because of quarantine. For example, people who commute and their transportation is shut down. You're unable to reach the place of employment because you have been advised by a healthcare provider to self-quarantine. So this is happening a lot right now based on anecdotal information from my clients, in that there are employees who will call up and say, I'm experiencing symptoms, but my healthcare provider won't test me or see me, and they have nonetheless given me an order to self-quarantine for 14 days to wait for the symptoms to pass. So that one is happening a lot. Another reason is an individual doesn't have a job or is not able to reach their job because of a direct result of the COVID-19 public health emergency. Another reason is because we have somebody who now is a new breadwinner because the head of household has died from COVID-19. Another one is, and this one I think is the most controversial, the individual has to quit their job as a direct result of COVID-19, or the individual's place of employment is closed as a direct result of COVID-19. So that's a lot. And you can imagine that a good many of people, based upon this expanded eligibility under the CARES Act, plus this long list of reasons, are going to be newly eligible to claim unemployment. And it's a challenge out there. The benefit that comes from CARES Act is an increased benefit. And if you are someone, for example, who already is eligible and receiving based unemployment dollars, the CARES Act amount is an additional $600 a week on top of that. So somebody could be receiving close to $1,000 a week based on whether they apply and qualify for both programs. Obviously, if you are somebody who doesn't normally qualify for Michigan unemployment, but do qualify for one of these federal expanded categories of eligibility, you would be receiving $600 a week and not the Michigan amount. The amounts start January 27th and end December 31, up to 39 weeks. But remember, you have to attest, certify under penalty of perjury that all of these things exist for you on a regular basis if you're one who's applied and continuing to get it. So essentially, just like you would receiving Michigan unemployment, because the program is still administered by the state of Michigan, even though the dollars come federally, the applicant has to certify every couple of weeks that they still are experiencing this set of circumstances with their job or their health that causes them to be eligible for unemployment in the first place. So I would expect that for some people, those circumstances are going to go away, but for others, they may linger up to 39 weeks. And those benefits are pledged to be available. Next slide, please. So a little moment to focus on the new business owner eligibility category. Under traditional Michigan unemployment, as those of you who are self-employed or independent contractors know, traditional Michigan unemployment does not give benefits to folks in those categories. But under the CARES Act and the program, the subset of the CARES Act program is specifically called Pandemic Unemployment Assistance, PUA. Business owners are eligible to claim unemployment, particularly the self-employed. So it's a pretty broad definition. If your primary source of income is from work you do for your own business or for your own farm, you're self-employed. If you are a gig worker, folks who drive for Lyft or Uber come to mind, who get jobs as jobs come and don't have a particular employer, they also are eligible. Another big group is independent contractors. If you are 1099 based work, you also will be able to apply. And the big question for a lot of states, and the state of Michigan included, was how to build an application that collects the right amount of information to determine whether somebody is eligible. This is why it took the state of Michigan quite a few days after the CARES Act partnership was announced by Governor Whitmer to actually build out the ability to apply for these types of benefits, because the state of Michigan didn't have the infrastructure in place to capture applications from some of these folks in these newly eligible categories. So it took some time. The applications just went online on Monday, the 13th. From what I'm hearing, the application will ask these business owners to show proof of income. And these are on the screen there, some of the items you would gather before you sit down at your computer to put together your application, to show where your money is coming from and to be able to show that your money is much reduced because of COVID-19 related reasons under the federal law. And that would be those 10 factors that I just talked about. And the question becomes, well, what if I'm not totally out of work, but some of my business or most of my business has gone away? Let's say I'm an independent contractor. What would be the kind of proof that I would need to show? Well, I think to show that, one example that I would cite is I have a client who is an event planner, and she had scheduled for March, April, May, June, a number of events coming up. And I think she was expecting, based on the contracts that people had signed with her, about $30,000 in income. And all of those events have since canceled. So she has the records to be able to show the income she was expected versus the income she now is not going to receive, based on the fact that COVID-19 has caused all of these events to cancel on her. So these are the kinds of things that you want to pull together to be able to represent when you make your application. At the end of my slides, on my links page, I do have the link for where you click through to apply for these unemployment benefits if you are a business owner or one of these other folks in these categories who previously wasn't qualified for unemployment. Next slide, please. So along with business owners and other categories of folks who are now newly eligible trying to get unemployment, I'm also hearing from my employer clients who are concerned about their employees quitting, not coming to work, or making the decision to simply stay home on the expectation of getting unemployment. So there are a good number of employers out there who are worried that they have work to do, but they are not going to have employees there to actually do the work. Because for some of us in the UP, I mean, our wages sometimes are not as high as the rest of the country. And for some people, they'd be doing better on unemployment wage-wise, at least for the weeks they're receiving unemployment, than they would actually working. So that's a concern. So a question that I get is, can an employee quit work to get on unemployment? Well, the question is maybe, based on the executive order that describes the COVID-19 related reasons that we just went through, as well as the federal reasons. There are all kinds of reasons why somebody might be justified and able to quit work in order to get on unemployment. The real question, though, is how do employees who are applying, how do they prove that they are actually using one of those approved COVID-19 reasons to quit work or not go to work? And it's really a tough one, because when an employee or anybody else makes an application for unemployment, for the most part, they're self-certifying. They are attesting to the facts that are causing them to apply for unemployment in hopes of getting it. And while I think it's clear to everyone that to claim something that's not true in order to get money is fraud, the federal guidance certainly outlines this. To simply quit in order to get unemployment only, to not have one of these COVID-19 related reasons, is fraud. To attest something that is false is perjury. And that being said, it really is going to depend on the employer who gets the monetary determination, which is going to come from unemployment, to check the reasons that an employee is applying and to determine whether the employee is claiming a truthful reason or not a truthful reason. I'm going to predict here that employer protests of monetary determinations for unemployment are going to go way up, because that's really one of the only checks on the system, especially under the CARES Act. The federal act puts the burden on the states to offer interpretive guidance and confirmation that somebody is actually claiming for COVID-19 reasons, but the state's system, in order to check on folks' claims, depends on the employer speaking up. So the employer protest, I think, is going to become a major reason why there is a check on the system, and an employer protest stay up in order to make that happen. So what about if an employee is placed on leave of absence and is using paid sick or vacation leave? Is that employee able to file for unemployment and receive it? The answer to that is no. In particular, the federal guidance under the CARES Act states that an employee who has paid leave available but is rejecting it in order to stay home and take unemployment is not eligible. Again, how do you prove it? You prove it when the employer gets the monetary determination and makes a protest. How about if the employee was already out on disability before this COVID-19 pandemic happened? No, both federal and state guidance describes that if an employee was already out of work for non-COVID-19 reasons, including disability, the employee is not eligible for these benefits. The final point here that I'm seeing a fair amount in my employer clients is an employee who just stops coming to work, even though the employer maybe a critical infrastructure employer, has plenty of work, or has telework. In other words, the employee has the ability to work full time and be paid for it, but the employee is just simply stopping work and not answering calls from the employer. Sometimes employees will say, I'm receiving, or I'm concerned about my health. I just want to self-quarantine. I'm concerned about the health of my family members. I'm going to self-quarantine. Of the reasons for claiming unemployment do require confirmation by a healthcare provider, at bare minimum, that there's a good reason to self-quarantine. For employers who see this sort of thing, again, it's going to end up falling to employers to self-police this, because the buck stops at the employer in receiving that monetary determination and filing a protest. As an employer, you'll set yourself up for success by communicating with your employees, number one, and asking them to provide proof for reasons why they're not coming to work, even though work is available. And you'll set yourself up for success if you document whatever arrangements the employer and the employee are working out. Document if the employee is emailing you to tell you they have a doctor's note or another healthcare reason. Try to nail down with the employee how long it's going to be before they'll be able to start working again, and try to get it in writing. These are all things that will be helpful later to produce that you need to file a protest UA based on a monetary determination that comes through that may or may not be truthful. That's where things lie at this point. Next slide, please. Here's that slide full of links. These are links that I check on an almost daily basis at this point in order to make sure that data hasn't changed on me. I think both the state of Michigan and the federal government have likened COVID-19 relief efforts as trying to build an airplane in the air while an airplane is flying. And the government regulations and guidance surrounding all of these programs certainly shows it, because guidance comes out on an almost daily basis. In particular, on the CARES Act unemployment, the guidance that I am speaking from came out on Sunday. So you will want to check these pages regularly if you have questions about who's eligible and how eligibility comes about. The federal page link is listed there at the bottom. That's a good one. There's not only further links to guidance, but also some frequently asked questions, FAQs, with good answers on it. Those links above in Michigan are the ones that will give you more information about Michigan-based unemployment and how the Michigan and federal programs work together. And then the last link under Michigan there, business owners apply for CARES PUA. That is the link that you get from the landing page on Michigan UIA that takes you to the application for expanded unemployment benefits for business owners and others who previously weren't eligible. So that's all I have to present to you at this point, but I'll be open for questions.
That's all? Whew. Holy cow. And I think Laura's note about these things changing rapidly only add to the uncertainty that employers are dealing with, and the employees as well. But that was great. And as you can imagine, we've been taking questions, and you can continue to type them in to the chat box. But I'm going to just jump right in. But thank you again, Laura, for that overview. That was wonderful. So I'm going to hit up Laura Moronic first. And the question is the EIDL program, it now has a new max of $25,000 versus the $10 million originally that came out with the CARES Act. Is that correct?
That's a moving target. On Monday, we had a notification that the loans would be up to 15,000 and the advances an additional 10, up to 10,000 for the advances. That would give a max of 25. However, we had a client downstate just get approval for a $420,000 loan. So I think we're getting information directly from the SBA, and I have to tell you that sometimes their information is behind also. They go through the main federal office, then they go through the regional office, and then to the state. And by the time we're getting in the information, it's been so fluid and changing so fast that at times it's different already when they're giving us the answers. So what we know right now, though, is they think they're bringing that limit back up again. They have set aside money and they'll keep giving loans until that's gone. So they might have approved out a lot of loans that weren't accepted. And so then they reassess how much money they have to lend out once again. So my advice is just to apply and see what happens. Yeah, they still have money.
Great, thank you. So again, and just for everybody, these are moving targets. Things are changing constantly. So make sure you stay connected when you're asking these questions, because the answer could change slightly. So that's some good news if it does go back up from the 25,000. Marty, can you speak a little bit about the MEDC grant program? I know there was a lot of us involved in that, but this question, there's a couple and I'm going to combine them, is how are people notified if they did or didn't get the grant? And then why was the Upper Peninsula only allotted 500,000 of the $20 million that the grant loan program came out with from the MEDC?
Sure, Amy, thanks. And certainly fair question. So we received $500,000 based upon a determination that the MEDC made. How that determination was made, we're not certain. But what I can say is, if you look at it just based upon population, we actually did better than we would have if it was done proportionally. So it was divided amongst 15 different regional economic development organizations across the state. And so in comparison, we actually did better just by virtue of population. Again, it was woefully short. It was well intended by the MEDC. I give them a lot of credit for finding some money to try to help some small businesses in making a small difference across the broad base that was needed. It was certainly important to those businesses that received it. Businesses that didn't receive it should have received an email. There was a review committee made up of 7 regional planning organization volunteers. So local EDOs were involved on the front end. They did a great job in terms of outreach to those businesses and getting us those applications. But at the end of the day, the review team of these regional economic development organizations, the planners included, just couldn't find enough money amongst the $500,000 that was allotted to address the great need. So we were able to address about 10% of the applications that came in, and those that didn't should have received an email. If someone has not received an email, I apologize for that. Oversight on our part, or maybe a mistaken email address. We had some problems with some firewall issues that kept initially some 60 or 70 emails from reaching their destination. I think we fixed that, but we did intend to get notification to everyone Monday morning that if they were not selected.
Great, thank you. And I know it was a difficult process, as many of us have worked with the small businesses, and the need is so great right now. Let's see, Laura Riley, there is a question for you, and I'm hoping I don't slaughter the intent of the question here. When we're talking about independent contractors, reading the unemployment rules makes it seem like an individual can work and receive benefits. It says an individual qualifies if they are making less than they did before they were teleworking. Is this correct?
Yes, this is correct. I would direct the questioner to the U.S. Department of Labor's Unemployment Insurance Program Letter 16-20. That is the go-to letter that describes this PUA, Pandemic Unemployment Assistance Program. And it has a section that talks about independent contractors and guidance for filing. And it notes that an independent contractor with reportable income can qualify for PUA benefits if he or she is unemployed, partially employed, or unable or unavailable to work because of COVID-19 reasons, and has forced that person to suspend activities. So partially employed is a category of the type of relief that an independent contractor can receive. So that is intended under the CARES Act unemployment benefits. So that questioner would have to gather up evidence that he or she might have that while he or she is still working, that the amount of work has gone down and the amount of income has gone down in a significant way, and that those reasons are due to COVID-19 reasons. So that should be able to be described in the application when the application is made.
Okay, great, thank you. Mary, question is, how do we best attract customers back to our businesses after and during the restart of the economy? Any suggestions?
That's a great question. So right now, as I mentioned earlier, our team is in constant training from a variety of sources like the IDC and the Chamber and SBA to help build a strategy for businesses. So we're hoping to be able to share something with the business community once the restart does happen.
Sounds good, thank you. Laura Riley, again, question being, if going to lay off employees, are they required to use their paid time off / vacation time first?
They are if the employer makes it available to them. So I have a lot of employers now, you know, their regular personnel policies stated restrictions on when employees were allowed and not allowed to use their banked up paid sick and paid vacation time. And many employers that I'm finding are releasing all of those restrictions and basically saying to their employees, you have available to you your entire bank of paid leave. Here it is. We'd like you to use it. So the Federal CARES Act guidance and Michigan guidance say that if an employee has available paid leave to use and refuses to use it in order to get on unemployment, that person is not eligible or has delayed eligibility for unemployment until they use that time. So it goes back to whether employers are lifting restrictions and making that paid time off available. And if employers are doing that, employees have to use time before they file for unemployment.
Great, thank you. So much for employers to have to manage during this time and keep a business afloat. It's difficult. Laura Moronic, the question is, when do I need to rehire my employees with the PPP?
Okay, so with the PPP loan, from the date that you receive disbursement, you can expense all your payroll expenses for 8 weeks. So usually the bank will tell you by the 8th week, at the end of the 8th week, they expect you to have all your employees back, because the idea of the PPP, it's a payroll retention program. So a lot of times the people have already let their people go. And so the planning is how to bring them back and utilize as much of that loan as possible so it will be forgiven. They've set stipulations that 75% of the loan has to be show proof that it's used for payroll expenses. So that's payroll, that can be benefit payments, you know, like health insurance. It can be sick time, family leave, paid family leave. It can be unemployment insurance is part of your payroll expenses, and it goes by gross pay because you don't take, you know, that includes the monies that you collect from the employees for the federal taxes. It's not supposed to be able to cover owner draws, but we're asking for more coverage on that because if an owner has a standard business and they take a normal draw on a monthly basis and they can document that, I think that the bank can argue that that is also a payroll expense of the business because the business owners are 100% liable for all taxes of profits. So we're still working on that one. The other 25% can be used for utilities, general liability insurance, phone, rent, mortgage payments, things like that. If it's done properly, right, and you bring back the employees as fast as possible and you can expense all that out, then 100% of the loan can be forgiven.
I like that sound, 100% forgiven loan right there. Marty, question for you. The Federal Reserve is pumping trillions of dollars into markets and banks. How does this help small business?
So I'm certainly no subject matter expert, but what I would tell you from what I hear from banks and particularly the small business community is, that money right now is just critical. It's a lifeline for the small business. And what I hear from banks, and we have two that serve as investors in our organization, is this differs so differently from 2008 and that crisis because banks are liquid at this point and they are really the best friend to small business. So you look at some of the programs that Laura has talked about in the PPP in particular, the banks are actually the ones administering that on behalf of the government. And so banks certainly are compensated. They receive an administrative fee for that. But really at this point, with where we stand in bringing business back, it's really the lifeline that so many small business needs. So to that point, it's why that federal programming is so important. State just doesn't have the resources. So there's certainly concern about what it's doing to the national debt, and I would understand that. But in terms of helping our small business community get through, it's really critical, particularly when you reflect back to that Federal Reserve survey study in where 60% of our business fears it will be in 6 months if they don't have some income coming in.
Thank you. And while I have your line unmuted here, you had mentioned Operation Gridlock when you were starting your presentation, and there were a couple of questions about what is happening.
Yeah, so I've continued to get some texts. It looks like there are thousands on the Capitol grounds at this point. Some pictures certainly show people are not social distancing. There was a live feed from the Detroit Free Press. I suspect MLive, the Free Press, and the news are all actively reporting. I've not looked, but it certainly appears that those that were inclined have gathered, and so we'll see what comes of that. But it appears peaceful, but it appears that there's not much social distancing going on with those in the grounds. There's hundreds of cars as well that have encircled the Capitol, it looks like, but there are certainly people out of their cars also protesting.
Yikes. Well, glad to be in the UP as usual.
As you saw from my utopian vision, it was the UP is a 51st state, so makes it all the
still
more.
Again. So I know we're running short on time and we're going to wrap things up. I have, and if there's some questions that haven't been answered, we will work to get the answers and get them out to you. You will also be receiving the slides and the recording of this webinar, and we would appreciate any feedback you have, additional speakers and topics that you think are important right now that we can assist you with, so please feel free to share those with us. One more question for Laura Riley before we sign off. Do unemployed, low-income earners and self-employed receive weekly unemployment plus the additional $600 CARES Act funds? And if they receive the extra $600 a week, do they pay income tax on that money?
First, an applicant does not get both the state benefit and the federal CARES Act $600 unless they qualify for the state benefit as well. So for those folks who are newly eligible based on just the Federal CARES Act, they don't get both the state and the Fed. They also get, they get just the federal benefit. So that's the $600 benefit. The second thing is that, yes, those benefits are taxable.
Wow, that's really good information, because I was under the impression that no matter what, you get both. So that's very helpful. I'm going to end with this question, and any of the panelists can jump in. The question is, where's a good site to find, all the resources that have state and federal grants, loans, applications, etc. And obviously, I would love to point everybody to the Lake Superior Community Partnership website, where we're trying to keep all that up to date on a daily basis. But I do have to also say, Business Leaders for Michigan, to me, has had, of all the sites that I've looked at, has one of the most comprehensive sites. Again, that's Business Leaders for Michigan, and they've done an excellent job of really populating that with just about anything you can think of. Any of the other speakers, panelists, have any suggestions to throw out there? All right, hearing none. Marty, Mary, Laura, and Laura, thank you so much for taking time to spend with us. And I don't think I mentioned, this was a record attendance for any of the partnership webinars. So thanks to all of you that took time to be here as well. You'll receive a follow-up email with the link in the recording. We welcome any feedback you have. Please stay safe, stay sane. And if there's anything we can do, you see the list of contacts from the partnership here, as well as you have the information on our panelists today. Please reach out. This is not a time to go it alone. Leverage those that are here to help and support you, and we will get through this. Thank you again, everybody, and particular thank you, Emily, our lead staff person, on pulling all of this together, and I appreciate everything you all do. Have a good day.